Kia ora, welcome to the Community Board meeting for the 12th of July. Thank you for attending. And can I pass to Chris, Councillor Hill, to say a karakia, please?
Sure. Kia ora everybody, karakia tātou. Whakatakita hau ki te uru, whakatakita hau ki te tonga, kia mākina kina ki uta, kia mātaratara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei, mauri ora. Cease the winds from the west, cease the winds from the south, let the bracing breezes blow over the land, let the bracing breezes blow over the sea, let the red-tipped dawn come with a sharpened air, a touch of frost, and the promise of a glorious day.
Kia ora, thank you very much, Chris. That's very appropriate. I'd like to first introduce Neil Lindsay, who's a graduate. He's joining us, well, is he? Yeah, joining us on Zoom. Graduate Community Policy Advisor, welcome Neil. And Alan Bywater, he may not be on there yet, okay. And do we have any apologies or latenesses? I know April is running late. She's been trapped by the tide. She is on her way. And is there anyone needing to leave early? No. Can I have somebody? Oh, and I'd also like to introduce Jess, sorry, who is the Youth Council representative. And welcome. We haven't had anyone here for a few years. It's really great to have you here, Jess. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Yeah. Yeah, so I'd like to someone to I'll move the apologies. Would somebody like to second that?
Please. I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favour? Okay. We move on to public forum, and I'd like to welcome the members of the public who have registered to speak to us today. There are a number of ground rules, and I'm just going to point them out to remind you. Your time is limited to 5 minutes. If you're disrespectful, malicious, or offensive language is used, or start to criticise elected members of staff, I will halt the presentation and you'll be asked to leave. You'll also be stopped from speaking if you have previously spoken to on this issue before, or have repeating views presented by an earlier speaker at the forum. So this meeting is being recorded and will be made available to view through the council website. So welcome, April.
Yes, sir, just to put up the tide.
Yeah.
Touch the waves.
Understandable. The first speaker we have is, well, Chris Hill has got a letter to read out. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm speaking on behalf of Rosemary Moretti, who is the owner-operator of the Collingwood On The Spot store. And I'm reading out the email that she sent me. And I've since spoken with her. Hi, Chris. Recently it's been brought to my attention that a disability parking area is to be placed right outside our shop door on Tasman Street, Collingwood. This is going to cause more problems than anything else, as we do not require this. We have no one asking us for this, and it will only make parking out the front of the store even more awkward than it is already. In summer, we have feeble split customers parking out the front of the shop, making parking a premium out front. It would be better placed across the road in front of the Memorial Hall. I believe you have a community board meeting tomorrow and would appreciate this could be discussed. A better plan for parking in Collingwood would be a 60 or 30-minute parking only down the shop side of the street, enabling people even get a park during our busy season. And just in conversation with Rosemary this morning, she also said that, so of course the Spit Tour customers can park outside the shop and be away for 6 hours. So I think that is an issue out there. And she said also that with the good rain, the gutters fill up with water along there, sort of a metre out from the gutter. And I've spoken with Jess this morning about a service request to have those drains looked at. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And our next speaker is Reg Turner. Good morning, Reg.
Good morning, everybody. Can you read me okay?
We can hear you.
I've got my picture on my computer. It doesn't give me the room that you're in. I can only see the chairman. Oh, no, the camera's obviously in a bad angle. Not to worry. Look, that letter from Rosemary was initiated by me. As you know, some months ago, maybe last year, in fact, I put to council to address mobility parking. I was given a copy of the suggested proposal of placing it outside the spot on. And I suddenly realized, no, that's not the right place. And I spoke to Rosemary yesterday, asked her to write the letter, which I have a copy of. And so really her issue is what I'm bringing to attention. I just want to endorse what she's asked for and tell you that I was the initiator of the whole attitude. There you go. That's my issue.
Thank you, Reg. All right. And that brings us to the end of public forum. I don't think there's anyone else left to speak, and we're running well ahead of time, well ahead of schedule, which is great. We can proceed. We have got a quorum, which is good. Thank you, April. You had half an hour, in fact, to get here. As far as standing orders go, you have to be here within half an hour of the start of the meeting. Otherwise, we would have had to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, I thought that the COVID legislation.
Yeah, I did too, but obviously not. This is probably a full meeting. First of all, any declarations of interest today? I will make mine clear that I was part of the Mahua 2042 sustainability strategy team. So that's conflicts of interest there, declaration of interest. Anyone else with anything coming up? No. Chris, do you have something?
I don't have a conflict of interest, but I just wanted a clarification about the previous item on whether on Zoom we are included as part of the quorum. It's my understanding that we are.
Mine too.
I don't know if Kim's able to advise us on that. Or somebody else.
Confirmation from the democracy team that is under the IDP.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it is okay. All right. So there was a slight misunderstanding there.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Right. The minutes of the last meeting. Has everybody read their minutes? And are they a true and correct record? That's the 14th of June. Can I have a mover for that, please? So you would like to move the minutes to correct?
Did we talk about the type of person?
No, yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We mentioned it.
I thought we were like
Yeah, I think that is matters arising from the minutes. But was that the type of thing?
No, the type of person was going to be like.
Oh,
That is such a misunderstanding. I was going to collaborate full to talk a little bit. these on, but just.
Yeah, well, you
don't
do.
know, we just know, so there's difference in the richness of our through.
Yes.
The members around that maybe we should add it explicitly of them.
Yes, yeah,
There's an
absolutely.
item
Yeah.
in the minutes about Russian literature.
Yeah.
So it's recorded and then.
So, thank you. Are they correct? Somebody like to ask that? Thank you, April. The seconder. Dave. Thank you, Dave. All in favour? Aye. No. Carried. Okay. Any late items?
No.
Well, it brings us on to presentations. We're a wee bit early, but we have with us Debbie Pearson and Sol Morgan. Mahua 2042 strategy. Are you ready to present?
Yes, where would you like? I'd like to be able to see the screens.
Yep. Well, right where you're standing
Oh,
would
yeah.
be absolutely fine. Come forward and yeah. Just give us a minute to bring the bring your PowerPoint up. I take it you didn't cycle in today.
Yeah.
Have you read it, Dave? Did you see it? I sent it out to you.
Say that again?
Did you read this strategy? Did you get a chance to read it?
Sorry. I'm not very onto it today.
And I don't know. I don't know if we've got a copy. Did you?
No.
Yes, he did.
Did
receive
it?
it.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
Sorry, we just got technical difficulties with the system.
Yeah.
Can you all see this slide?
Talk about seeing people.
Is everyone on Zoom able to see the screen? Yes, okay. We're good to go then.
All right, great. Well, thanks everybody on screen and here for the opportunity to present on my 2042 sustainability strategy. So this has been quite a journey. It's involved many different gatherings and hui with the community. We had some online options for bringing everything together. Basically, the idea of the whole strategy was to ensure we got as much community input into this that was a community-led and community-owned strategy. So if you just want to skip to the next slide. This is a picture of one of the many gatherings that we had. This was an invited forum. Part of what we did there was invited people from all different parts of the community. One of the issues with some of these things like a sustainability strategy is that you get the same people who are already bought into your sustainability idea, and we wanted to get people from all different walks of life. So we invited the police, we invited the health guys, we invited people from businesses, just everybody we could think of. We tried to cover the whole and we got a good spread, which is really, really nice. And so what we did was gather everybody's information, and maybe if we just flip to the next slide, I'll give you an idea of what ended up in the strategy. So this is a bit of an overview. It captures what the visions and aspirations of our community are for sustainability into the future. So sustainability for 2042. And then it pulls out all of those ideas. We sort of corralled all the information and pulled them into key strategies. So it outlines those key strategies that will help realise the vision. It celebrates all the things that we're already doing. It identifies where the community felt there were gaps. And then it proposes these projects and some different strategies and approaches to help fill the gaps. One of the important things about this document, this is what the document looks like. I know no one out there can see it. You guys, this is what the document looks like. What I've just given you is the 2 pages of thing. So one of the important things about this document is it's a living document. This picture changes all the time. So we've got it captured, we've got some great vision, some great strategy, and now we just keep working on new things, new ideas, new projects, and actually make it. So we've just got to the next slide. So this is the vision that came out of all that work. Thriving community, healthy environment. So it's pretty simple and so all-encompassing. Our vision is for a flourishing community that is adaptable, caring and inclusive. We work in concert with nature to preserve and improve our environment, and our sustainable approach inspires others. So that last line is about seeing ourselves as able to do things here that maybe others couldn't do in different communities. We've got such a vibrant and engaged community that we believe that we can become a bit of an exemplar in terms of what happens with sustainability and a wonderful approach with our community and our land. There's a really nice quote actually on the front of the strategy. Manaki whenua, manaki tangata, haere whakanua, which is by caring for the land and the people, the future will be prosperous. And I think that sums up so much what we're looking to do in the strategy. So if we just pop to the next slide. So we underpinned all of this with values, which I think is absolutely essential in all. Those are what lasts going forward. So we came up with the C's: connections, community, caring, and competence. Whakapapa, whanangatanga, manakatanga, and kia kaha. So connections, community, caring, and confidence. Connections between ourselves, our community, and the land, with each other and within. Community, bringing everybody together and doing things in concert. Caring, being a nurturing community that cares. And confident, being prepared to stand up and say what we believe in, and being prepared to push the boundary and do things new in a new way. So, and all of those values were underpinned by oh, my Māori's terrible, but where is it? Tiakitanga, the stewardship idea, and Wairuatanga. So having stewardship, having care for the land, and the spiritual dimension all existent. So those are our key underpinning values. Got to the next slide.
Agricultural.
Is that a question? Or
Someone's just not on mute.
oh yeah. So in order to bring all the information into a way of organising it, we organised it into different categories. And those categories were healthy ecosystems, education, work and economy, social and community, the built environment, responsible consumption and production, governance and partnership, health and wellbeing, creativity and innovation, energy and transport. So there was heaps of categories, 11 different categories. And for each of those categories, there's a vision and strategy in the document. And under each one, there's a long, long list celebrating what we're already doing. It's really heartening to see how much we've already got going. And it also identifies where the gaps are. So out of all that, we identified what we see as the flagship projects, and these are the ones that are already underway. We've got some amazing projects already underway, and this is not by any means all of the projects that are happening. We've just highlighted a few of the particularly large and big ones. So Project Mohua, which is an umbrella which encompasses a huge number of our conservation projects, just heaps that's going on under there. The Motopipi River Willow Eradication and Restoration Project, which is Mr. Work, which is a fantastic example of landowners and the schools and the council and everybody getting together and making a huge difference in one of our waterways that was quite polluted. Farming 2030, which is a collaboration between more environmentally minded people and farmers, and looking at what we can do to change those conversations, looking at how we can pilot different environmental techniques on farm and measure those on a commercial farm. Golden Bay Affordable Housing, which is looking at bringing a completely new housing model to the Bay, which enables people that could not normally afford to be in their own home to be in their own home. The Golden Bay Eco Village, looking at new ways of living in an eco-friendly way, and there's just that straight out here. It's awesome to watch that starting to go. And then the Farewell Whauriki South Coast Nature Trust Restoration Project, which is massive and is based between Farewell and Whauriki, and looking at reintroducing shorebirds and pest eradication all the way down. But it's a huge undertaking, and got massive funding that's coming from another. A great thing about this is the collaboration again between one of our businesses that's sort of leading the way in terms of a sustainable and environmental friendly approach, which is HealthPost, and then all sorts of other organisations as well, and heaps of volunteers going into that too. So some nice examples of all sorts of collaborations and what can happen. So yeah, we can just go to the next one. And then we had some aspirational projects. So these are based on where the gaps were. The creation of a sustainable brand that defines the Bay. The idea being that you set up an accreditation program, you set up a brand that goes with that accreditation program, and each time people take up the idea of being more sustainable and you can show what you've done, that all gets adds collateral, if you like, to the awesomeness of the Bay in terms of sustainability, and to their own business as well, because now they can use that sustainable brand. Each builds on the other. The Centre of Sustainable Education and Innovation. So taking what's already happening here, we've already got some awesome stuff that Sol and the team have been championing through the Sustainable Living Centre, and taking that onwards and onwards. So, you know, actually becoming what could be an ecoversity for sustainability. A local food plan that looks at all of the different ways that we can improve our food resilience, collaborate, do better things with our waste. Sustainable education and awareness campaign basically helps to put out information for what individuals can do and what businesses can do. And then this idea of switching to renewable energy. We've already got masses of good examples in the Bay of renewable energy, but there's lots more that we could do as well. So we, at the recent Sustainable Hui, there's some excellent workshops on that, and we've got some really good professionals in the Bay in this area. So I think it's heaps we can do. It's really exciting. So, okay, those are the aspirational projects. So what are the next steps? Well, one is, so far, all of this work has been community-led and volunteer-led. And if we are going to realise all of the things in the strategy, we actually now need to be funded. So in order to get funding, we need a governance structure, you know, a structure that, and what we're looking at is a trust. And what we're actually thinking is that that trust will be made up of leaders from throughout our community, so that it basically can sit over the top of this very diverse range of projects and be saying, yes, this is what we want for our community. So that's the thinking there, and we're still working through that, but I'd be very interested in community board feedback on that in terms of the governance. We launched, as many of you know, a number of you were there, on last month. And out of that, after the launch now, we're looking at a series of workshops. So those workshops are taking all of these ideas and starting to really bring them together, gel them up, make sure that they've got legs, and if they've got legs, put a plan together and look for the appropriate funding to make that project run. So there's one that Sol's heading up on the local food plan. Dave Tinkler is heading up on the Golden Bay Sustainable brand. And then one of us, maybe me or Sol or one of the others, Renewable Energy Roadmap. And then the last thing, but also extremely important, is funding. All of this now needs to be funded. So I spent yesterday looking at all of the different funding options and what we can look to apply to set this up so that it actually really flies. One thing that I haven't said, and I would really like to say before I finish and turn over for your guys' questions and your thoughts, is the team that pulled this all together. So there was a really awesome core team that sort of corralled everybody and did all the facilitating of the workshops. And well, myself, Grant and Sol, who are here, Dave Tinkler, Charlotte Squires, Claire Webster, from State District Council, are the other members of the team as well. Anyone else? Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's been a great team to work with. It's been sort of 3 years. So I think that's the end. Oh, there's one more slide. Oh yeah, 2 more slides. So what do we see that leaders can do to help? So community board, council members can, and also national leaders, all of our community leaders. Well, this is not owned by anyone other than our community. So I see community leaders inspiring people to want to be part of it and supporting us in any way that they can. I think leaders have got a huge role to play in terms of the policy that is created. Our policy environment can either support making these things easy or it can make it more difficult. And I know we've mainly got council and community board here. So from a council and community board perspective, I think that there are ways that we can look at our current policy and see, does it support these sustainable practices? And if it doesn't, how do we enable it to? So I think there's real opportunities there to make some difference. And community connections. I mean, every single time we have these discussions and presentations, I get a whole lot more people to network with. And out of that, we've had some amazing connections. We're working with the Climate Change Forum, and they're just awesome people to work with. Yeah, there's just lots of opportunity to keep making different connections. We've got each of those workshops that I talked about. We've got some amazing speakers from that are coming in on Zoom from all over New Zealand and some from overseas as well. There's some really great examples of people that have done this before. So, like, next slide, please. And what do we want from the community board? I would love the community board to endorse the strategy. And we are looking to set up this trust, and we do need funding. And I thought that if the community board felt this was something they wanted to support, then seed funding of 500 would go some way towards helping to establish that trust. Oh yeah, so that's the quote that I've already read out. By caring for the land and the people of the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question.
Thank you very much, Debbie. And yeah, I open the floor up to questions from yes, Celia.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's inspiring.
Thank you.
So my question is that you've got 11 categories.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering whether you'd considered that maybe it's spreading quite thin if you're considering all those categories, and whether or not you considered narrowing the number of categories, or how did you approach that situation? Because I can imagine that could have been a bit of a dilemma, really.
Yeah. So originally we did try and keep them down. Like we tried to keep it to about 6 or 8 categories, and it just kept growing. So we ended up with 11. We actually had some added while we were at the forum, people feeling that there were gaps where they wanted to put things in. What I would say about those 11 categories and working with them in terms of gathering information was you got just a richness of information under each one. Because as it was lumped up, people thought about less things. So it got you a huge richness of information. And then the way we're managing the difficulty of having too many things, because there's a huge number of things on the list, you'll see just pages and pages of things, is putting them into those aspirational projects. So those then become the first things that we focus on. So we have about 6 things that we will be focusing on, as well as the ones that are already going that we just keep, making sure what others are already doing those, and we just keep in touch with what they're doing. And in all of this, it won't be the small team that is doing it all by any stretch of the imagination. I see this as our gift to the community, and now it's the community that decides, yes, that's something we really, really want, and we'll step into that breach and lead it. So, but those aspirational projects are really the way that we're managing the huge number of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
Yes, that answers.
Mm.
Are there any other questions?
We've got everybody
Good
showing
on
on
Zoom,
Zoom
showing,
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
no. Well, I have to say, we'll definitely take a look at your questions to us. Maybe not this week, but I think there's a lot of reading to do. It is an 80-page document, no, 60-page document. Yeah, and there is a lot to read in it. It's online, and I would suggest that we at least read the first 10 pages. Because they're the real crux of it. And I think if we can put it on the agenda for next chair report for next month to discuss it and to look at funding. If you're looking at funding, do you need to fill out application form?
Sure.
Okay, you can pick one of those up on the way out or through the link. Yeah,
That'd be great.
okay, and we can look at that next month. And yeah, so that's for the chair's report next month. So yeah, thank you
All right.
very much for coming and presenting that. Yeah, I hope folks who have zoomed in over the hill also take this on board. I think it's good for the whole region.
All right.
Thank you. All right, so that brings us on to our next presentation. We are, like I say, running a bit early. If that's okay. Neil Lindsay and Helen Bywater, welcome. And you're going to be talking to us today all about changes to leasing and licensing.
Got it. So do I share my screen now? Is that
Yes, please.
yeah. Cool? Just do that now. So can you all see that? I'll assume that's a yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Ah, wonderful. Thanks. So kia ora. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. If you haven't met me, my name is Neil Lindsay. I'm a policy advisor in the strategic policy team at council, and simply brief you on a piece of work I am leading in the team, which is the development of. So through this process, we are undertaking early engagement with community groups in Golden Bay. So we're taking the opportunity to inform you about our plans and the purpose of the policy. So it's just to give you a head up on the work that we're doing and some key points off the timeline moving forwards. Yeah, so effectively so the purpose of the new policy is to effectively help us guide how we make new decisions on providing leases and lots that use either council land or council facilities. So you could think a sports could perhaps use one of our own buildings. Currently, we don't have a policy or framework to guide how we provide leases. So by creating a policy, we're hoping to make the process a bit easier for community groups, provide a bit more transparency and guidance to how we operate moving forward. So this slide is simply to give a flavor of some of the issues that have arisen from not currently having a policy framework. A lot of this is around how we recover outgoings. Because we don't have a consistent framework, a lot of how we operate is rather ad hoc at the current. You'll notice a lot of inconsistency between groups in regards to amount paying in rent or rates, for example. Groups have come to us saying that we need to be clear who takes responsibility for what, and that's something that groups have issues raised in the past. So this policy will help us guide how we make decisions through that moving forward. This is just a flavor of the many interrelated issues that having a policy has meant. So as a result of the policy, we're mainly hoping to create a consistent and equitable framework that makes things fairer and easier for groups while having the flexibility to change things regarding specific issues that might arise. To do this, we want to gain feedback from groups regarding what doesn't and does work in terms of a policy, which is what we're doing right now in terms of early engagement. With the policy, we plan on establishing some clear rules and consistency regarding how groups can apply for a lease and what they can expect for council, while allowing flexibility to account for individual issues that may arise. So for the timeline for the project, we're undertaking early engagement with community groups, iwi and community associations right now. Once we have a draft policy, we will be workshopping it with councillors in December. And if you would like, I'm happy to workshop it with the community board as well to gauge your opinions. And after that, we will hopefully go out for public consultation and we will go from there. So in terms of what's happened, we sent emails to community groups, iwi and community associations across the district, including Golden Bay, simply ask them what works and what doesn't work about our current arrangements. We're seeking this feedback because we want the views of groups to inform the policy, because it's intending on making their lives a little bit easier. We're also looking to speak with groups who don't currently have an arrangement with council, but may like to in the future. So if you happen to know any, please let me know and I'll get in contact with them and gain their feedback for the policy. So with that, that's all I have. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to email me later on.
April.
Yeah, I guess this policy is going to be quite hard because there'll be different rules for different properties. Like, for example, an income deriving piece of dirt, like a campground or something, would probably, I assume, be at market rates like any other commercial business to a sports ground or something.
Yes, that's a difference in the policy, that we have commercial leases as well, which would cover things like campgrounds and also some of the stores and stuff in Mapua. So that wouldn't come under the scope of the current lease. This policy would only come under community groups, say. So that's specifically something that the policy will mention.
Okay. Dave.
I don't think I missed anything, but are you looking at charging sports groups and clubs and for the use of council staff? And I would have thought that allowing these groups to use council ground and to some extent for free is by far the best option when you're trying to encourage these good healthy activities to take place, not get some kind of thing where they've got to apply for a lease and then get charged an annual fee. This stuff should be free because it's of good benefit to the people of the community.
Yeah, so that's part of the feedback why we're going out for our engagement at the moment. So that's something that we're going to take on board, and those are discussions that we're going to have in the next few months.
If I could just add to that, so we're not talking about the kind of use of sports fields and those sorts of things. So that's not, we're not anticipating people the arrangements for that changing. That's not a leasing arrangement, but it may be sports groups like bowls clubs, tennis clubs, those sort of organisations that lease a piece of the council's land on an ongoing basis, and we just need to, again, part of the policy is recognising the benefit that those organisations bring to the community, but at the moment, it's very inequitable in terms of which groups are charged how much, and we're trying to get much more of a consistent sort of framework for the future.
Abby, were you wiggling your hand in anticipation of what is this question?
Chris is not ready.
You're muted. No. Okay, Chris.
Kia ora, through your chair. Thank you for the presentation. And we've had a look at this at council too, haven't we? And I think we've got a workshop coming up over there. Is that right?
In December, yes. So a bit of a while away.
Yeah. So I mean, I welcome something being developed. So when I think there was a bit of a rationalising a little while ago among staff with the various community leases. There must be dozens and dozens and dozens of them throughout the community, throughout the district.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that when I know at that time, I got a flurry of calls, and Celia may have too, and maybe board members did too, from clubs, wondering what was going on and how are they going to afford to pay. And here, just to focus here in the Bay, the ways that clubs have been, the genesis of them is unique in each case, really. Mm. So if you think about the Senior Cits Hall, I think built by the community, probably working bees, a lot of fundraising. It's run by a very small committee. I think it's been handed to council, so I think that's as a council facility now, not sure. And but if you think about that and the amount of money that's charged to go and have a meeting there overnight, it's really minimal. So there's hardly any money coming in to cover even pan charges or any of our other costs. So that's an example of that. And as I understand it currently, if that committee was to fold or something, then it goes back to council. Puhata Boat Club's another one that's been on the radar, and I know the lease is close to being signed there, so that's good. And there've been specific issues there, I think. But Aorere Futures Trust, gifted land, the neighbour there that owned the land, gifted the land, built a shed, fantastic facility for Golden Bay. Those yachts and boats and paddle boards and things in there. Waka Ama's there too now. For those outfits to pay pan charges, pay rates, pay whatever their lease fees are going to be, it doesn't take much for it to be unaffordable. And I think it's a good process to go through, and we want to, I think as a board, we need to encourage all our community groups to make submissions about their specific facility, what's worked, what doesn't, what's unaffordable, because we don't want to see these things closed down. So I appreciate that council's trying to find a way to have some consistency. But consistency isn't always the answer either, I think, when there's such a range of setups in these communities, facilities. Yeah, so I think it's quite a thing to work out. There's no simple answer. I think it's going to be a complex bit of puzzle to come up with things that are fair and equitable, and where council can show its support. And then there's the question about who pays?
Yeah. No, thanks for that feedback, councillor. No, it's very useful. And definitely if you have groups and definitely
Oh, it's frozen.
Yeah, I think Neil's frozen. I mean,
Yeah.
encourage them to make a decision on
No, I think.
right, it's going out. Yeah, I mean,
engagement or the eventual consultation.
trying to balance the differences that Chris has mentioned between different groups and how they originated against some sort of overall framework, and that'll make things more consistent is definitely going to be a challenge as we work through this. But yeah, and yeah, some of those issues in terms of affordability is very much front of mind, and will need to be worked through as part of this process.
Just as a follow-up, so I might have missed this on the slide around the process, engagement and things, but it might be helpful to have drop-in session, and clubs be notified that that's going to happen, and board members be there with staff and say, look, come along, talk to us. We can, help with just your key points for your submission. I'm just wanting people to submit, because there's submission overload, there's consultation overload, and there's also among some an idea that we don't listen anyway. We just ask us just to tick a box and you don't care what we say. So that's not true, of course. But I'd like us to have an engagement process that really, where we really are really available, for people to drop in and work out what's going on, what they can influence, let you know about their particular situation. And I think that just the last point for me, I think, sometimes people in the community have donated a facility or land or building or something, and then it's a bit of a puzzle about how come there's then paying for it. So I think it's a good opportunity in this consultation process to really let people in the community know about how council are approaching this too. Thank you.
Very good point. Thank you, Chris.
So if I could just address the point that Chris raised. So we have got an online sort of drop-in session organised, but if you as a board you feel that it would be helpful for us to come and do a face-to-face drop-in session in Golden Bay, then we could certainly make that happen as well.
I think it would actually, personally, but we'll be up to the whole board. Councillor Butler.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Just on that, just to follow up with that particular point, I agree that a drop-in session would be beneficial. So the question I've got really is, there are a number of facilities that community groups actually started off and that have been actually handed over to council, and I don't think there's sort of a general understanding of what those are and how many of them there are. It's something that just happened, and the wider community is not aware. So one of the things about that is actually for us to know if there's some kind of inventory that can be available as to what these sort of facilities are that you're thinking of. And then the other thing is the recognition that community groups have actually funded them, and that then they sort of feel that now they're having to pay for them to use them. So I'm sure that point has been made and will be made, but I think it's just worth making it again. So yeah, the some kind of inventory of what we're actually talking about, up to date one with facilities. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. No, that's definitely in the works, and it's likely to be part of the final consultation once we get onto that. But that's definitely something that we're taking aware of. Yeah.
Yeah, I do tend to agree that in the Bay, I'm not trying to single this out as being totally different, but there is a little bit of scepticism on being told what is going to happen from over the hill. And I think that it's really important that we do engage over here as much as possible, especially that list. I think Celia has hit the nail on the head with a list of the facilities that we're talking about, because people may not realise. Anyway, thank you for that presentation. I appreciate this, and I'm looking forward to a workshop in December here too. I think that would actually help us on the community board, whoever's in there. We can't sort of have a crystal ball, but I think it would be a good idea. And keep us informed, please.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
we'll liaise with Jess about the drop-in session in Golden Bay, so we'll sort that out and make that try and fit that in a time when board members can come along as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, and that brings us to the end of the presentations, and now we move to the chair's report. Here it is. All right. We go into items of public forum. So we talk our first speaker or letter writer was Rosemary Maletti, Collingwood, talking about the disability parking area outside the shop. Yeah, where do we sit with that? Because that's been on the cards for a while, number one, and number two, you know, who is the best person to make the choice of where it happens? Is there an actual policy around these things? Because it might have a lot to do with policy, and also might have, yeah, I can see that. And so I'm actually going to go to Abel first. You had your hand up.
What about in front of the pool was a problem? These toilets.
Well, yeah, I can't see why not, personally. But again, we probably need to have the whoever's making these decisions talk to them about why the decision is made. There might be some reason for it being there that we don't know about. Abby.
Yeah, like you said, Grant, I think our best course would be to go back to staff before we start discussing what we could do, so we know what we can do, and we can take the feedback back to Robert as well.
Yeah. Celia, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, a wee bit of history. This was brought to the board by the police actually originally, who had been asked by a community member, a disabled person, to try and get this disabled park in Collingwood. So it's actually got quite a long history. But as regards the actual placing situation and placing of it, then I think that we really need to, there needs to be some coordination with staff over there.
Yeah. I also, she brought up some interesting points about the people parking all day long who go on Fairwell Spit tours, and that has been a bit of an issue from what I understand. And you know, the idea of having a parking limit on one side of the road, especially in the summertime, has raised its head. I know on the community board since I've been on the community board, so it is an issue there. And maybe we need to talk to Robert. Maybe we need to put this on the chair's report next month and have a talk to Robert about it. April.
I remember it didn't go down too well last time the subject came up, and as we talked to the business owner, it's affected by this because it
Was that the Fairwell Spit tours? Yeah.
and also just lost it about this.
Abby. Yeah. Eddie,
You're muted, Eddie.
mutate.
Sorry, I'm on my phone because my laptop's not working, so it's all different. Sorry. I think Chris has had her hand up for a while. Grant, I can go after Chris.
Right, Chris.
Thanks, Abby, through you, Chair. I think I agree. I think it's just good to work out with Robert perhaps what the process has been and what's in place. So has a decision been made? If there has, you know, it doesn't matter if it gets changed. What are the criteria that they take into account? Has the shop owner been spoken with? I mean, Rosemary, it's Moretti Grant. I'm not sure if we got that spelling right, Moretti. Rosemary hadn't been spoken to by anybody about this. So just to find out some of those things, I think would be good. Just a little research as a service request even, or as a board request. Just find out what's happening and when's it due. If a decision has been made, when's it due to go in? Because it'd be a bugger if it was going to go in next week and then we'd report a month away. So I don't know if we need to do it through the chair's report in terms of process, but surely we can just give Robert a ring and so what's the deal?
Actually, Councillor Bill, it says the 8th of July was the date that it was going to be painted.
The weather might have been on our side then for this. I completely agree with Councillor Hill. I am happy to have forward the recommendations through to Robert and have a chat about process and how we can possibly influence any outcome or decision, and check in that he has actually consulted with the affected parties.
Yep, I agree. Okay.
Could we just add in there about the 60 minute thing as well?
Yep.
For Robert, just about, you know, how would that get actioned, or how would you work out if that's what most people in Collingwood would like? When, you know, the Farewell Spit Tours people could park down the boat ramp and they could park on the beach car park. I'm not sure if Paddy encourages that or not, but that would be
I think
helpful,
he does.
I think.
Yeah, I think he does. We have had a conversation with Paddy about this. They do have parking behind the building as well, which people are instructed to park at when they book, but no harm following up again.
So do you want to follow that one up, Eddie?
Yep, I can do that.
Robert around? Yeah.
Yep.
But first of all, Celia.
Yeah, I think that this maybe needs to go to Jamie, Transport Manager as well, because there may be some other staff who would need to be involved in looking at the bigger picture of parking in Collingwood, and whether or not that has actually happened. Whether or not there has been actually a planning process for, because there are these other issues. It's not just the disabled park, it's actually people taking up car parks all day.
I agree.
So it needs to go through Jamie, and we need to, I think that we need to put a delay on it happening immediately.
That was Eddie. Just to talk to Robert about that.
Well, it's Jamie.
Or Jamie. Would you like me to follow it up?
Has he delegated it to Robert or what? But we need to know whether or not he's delegated it.
I think Abby's made the offer, hasn't she?
Yeah. So if you could follow that up, Abby, that'd be great. I'm sure you're muted, so I can't hear you. Will you get hold of Robert and Jamie?
Yeah, sorry, I'm really struggling to hear now. It's it's gone really, really quiet for some reason, and I can't figure out how to take my hand down. So it's going really well.
Well, your hand's gone.
Oh, good.
So
yeah, the volume's really bad. So just shout at me.
Are you going to follow up with both of them, both Robert and Jamie?
Yeah.
For all those points.
Yep.
Yeah. What was the planning process, etc.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eddie. And well, Reg was the same. So I'll just put him in with the rest of that. All right. that's everything for the public forum. Now we come to the similar roading issues, speed limits. At the board meeting on the 14th of June, the board received a request to lower the speed limits in Takita and Collingwood from 50 kilometres an hour to 30 kilometres an hour. Should the board decide to, they can send a letter to council transportation planning officers who are developing the speed management plan, which will go out for public consultation later this year. So, do we want to endorse it? Are we for it or are we against it? I think we spoke a little while ago that we were for it. April.
Yeah, I'm for it because particularly in Target, it's a very narrow street. And when you go through that extra 50k, it seems like you're going damn fast. And it's only a short street, like it's not like someone's going to get impatient when you go on driving, 5k at 30 kilometres an hour, it's such a short street. I think it's, and at Christmas time with kids racing out between parked cars.
Yep.
I think 30k for cyclists, it's all squashed in. I think 30k is a great idea.
Good. 50 kilometres an hour in a great big stock truck seems extraordinarily fast.
Well, I don't know if
Faster
they
than
go
a car even. They do go through sometimes. I've seen it. So it does, I do agree. Councillor Butler.
Yeah, some water's already gone under the bridge, and the draft, the site walking and cycling strategy, which has been adopted by council already, actually that is part of it. That was the case through the town, which with no designated cycleway, but 30k instead. So there's that. And the second thing is that there is it's actually state highway, NZTA. They are going to be consulting on reducing speed limits between Takita and Collingwood anyway, which I know is not actually a particular issue here. But the Tasman Regional Transport Committee has got NZTA on it as well as council, and that the NZTA person on that committee is committed to working in sync with council over the speed management plan. So yeah, it's all actually. I think that the board should actually write and say what they think. I think that it's going to, there's going to be quite a move towards making this happen, and we want it to happen sooner rather than later.
Great. Councillor Hill.
Kia ora, thank you. I was thinking about the process around how the board makes a decision to support or not something, so we can all just say what we think, agree or don't agree each, and then that if we're representing a community, how do we know what most people would support or not? And I think that given that there's going to be a consultation later in the year about it, that covers it for me, I guess. But I think that the board, if the board can engage somehow around that consultation process, council will lead it. But how we sort of get more engaged with the community around these processes, so that we do feel confident that all the voices are heard from the community. Some people think this is a terrible idea, won't they? But when I do see cars or big utes or trucks and trailers scooting through at 50k an hour, I just, it's pretty quick, given the width of the street, and the idea of children just shooting out from a car, it would just be all over really. So I've often thought that as I've seen people go through at the speed limit. So my own view is I would support a reduction. I think in Motueka doesn't, it's no drama there, is it? With 30k there from Fairway up the High Street. So that's my personal view, but I do want to see I'd like to see the board really helping to get community voice heard around it. Thank you.
Are we too early to draft a letter to this committee to ask Dave,
Yeah, it's sometimes I think we over-regulate these speed limits. Remember the old ad, it's not supposed to be a target. I mean, even if you got a maximum speed limit, you're still supposed to drive to the conditions. And at certain stages of the day, 50 kilometres an hour is way too fast and is dangerous. But the law can cover for that kind of thing. A mate of mine a few years back, he got done for dangerous driving because he went about 40 kilometres an hour through town. So I don't need to have speed limits for every little stretch of road. At some stages of the night or early hours in the morning, 50 kilometres an hour is painfully slow through Tākega. So you got to drive the conditions, and I think all these speed limits, every little stretch of road they're imposing on us now is basically dumbing the population down.
yes, good point, Dave. Celia,
Yeah, I think just it would be perhaps better to write to the Tasman Regional Transport Committee.
Yep.
Rather than the council transportation planning officers. That would be my suggestion, or else write to both of them. But the other issue is that it's the speed limit in Collingwood, because the one in Tākega is pretty well going to happen. So it's the speed limit in Collingwood is something that I think I agree that we need to encourage that, the community to put into their idea, because that's a relatively new idea.
right, it seems to be popping up in towns all over New Zealand. I mean, I just did a South Island trip and it's everywhere. All the inner city, all the inner town speed limits are at 30 k's now, and it does actually make sense, whether you like it or not. I think it's safety first. So can we? I know, Dave, you're not so into the idea, but do we want to send a letter, draft a letter to
Tasman Regional Transport Committee.
that? Thank you.
And that will include that includes Waka Kotahi as well.
Right. Okay.
That's why that's an important committee to write to, because it's a joint.
Well, we could CC both of them.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, yeah,
Council
just
transportation.
yeah. I think it's both of them actually. Who's going to write that? Can we? You can't write it. Just to endorse the 30 kilometre an hour speed limit is what I think the letter needs to say through Tākega, and that a good public consultation process is brought up for the Collingwood one especially, but yeah, also Tākega. As long as it's clear to the public and why. I think people don't like change, but if they understand why, I think that gives them a good opportunity to really take it on board. Yeah. Shall I sit down with you and help write it?
I think also it would be good for the board to be informed about the consultation process for this speed management plan.
Yeah, when's that
Because
coming
it's
out?
a new way of setting speed. The speed. So has the board actually had any information about that?
The new
Yeah,
way
the
of
new
doing it?
way of
No,
doing
we
it.
haven't.
No. So what I suggest
you.
that we ask for Jamie or somebody from his team to give us a rundown on the new way of setting speed limits.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Next week, next month, we ask to have Jamie do a presentation about that, or talk to us about it. Talk to us about it. There's probably often a few roading issues. We'd be good to have either Jamie or Robert to come and check in a bit more now and then. We do seem to have a lot of roading issues around here that we need to ask like speed limits. I mean the parking, Collingwood. So you know, it just sort of
And
yeah.
then we need to do a bus tour of sites in the day. And then we will do it.
Okay, so we've got somebody to write that letter. What's that? Just
No,
she's not going to.
a member of the
Yeah,
committee can drive that.
yeah, of
letter.
course.
All right.
Do you want to?
Well, I mean, I don't mind doing it, but
Yeah, and just
I
see it
am on
around.
the problem is I'm on the Tasman Regional Transport Committee, so I really, it would be good if actually a board member rather than a councillor did it.
Well, I don't mind. I don't mind doing it. I'll get the deep points of what I need to put in
You want
there.
to
Yeah,
liaise with me
yeah,
over it?
I will. I'll
Yeah,
liaise
we'll
with
do.
you. All right. Thank you for that. Meeting locations. That was, I think that's for our information. It's quite a clarity about the policy and how Zoom works, and unfortunately how COVID has affected our ability to work out of Collingwood and the changes. So yes, Councillor Butler.
Would raise a question.
Yeah.
Has Jess got a copy of the agenda? No, so
Oh, thank you.
Jess does not have a copy of the agenda.
Is there one I think?
You want, just if you want, everyone put this.
Thanks, Celia.
It's just a shame that we can't see it. It's totally pretty around the same time.
Yep.
And to what category is it on? So many places, there's a bundle of beauty out there. To what you know, branch things, it's not the way it's existing in the open zone. It forms quite. It's a pretty good kind of location that we can do from.
Right.
Yes.
We have investigated
Yeah.
options to hold meetings in Collingwood at alternative locations. The problem is that we are required to live stream or have recordings available and do not have the capacity or any meeting rooms that have that facility that we've been able to identify to provide that, which is required under the legislation.
Victoria.
It does not have the AV capabilities that were required to host the Zoom meeting.
The screen, the camera. That's just and the microphone. It's just doesn't have those facilities.
At one stage, you were talking about having meetings to take a walk day and
Yeah, we were.
going around and being really getting out and that's community.
That was definitely an option, and that was before all this COVID stuff happened. Before things changed. So that's we're in a situation, unfortunately. Maybe we'll get back to it one day, but you know, I think it opens it up for more people to zoom in from around the place than ever before. I personally think we've got it's a better option now in a way, having the meeting here. Anyone can zoom in. It takes nothing. It's a free thing to download your Zoom app, either on your phone or your computer, and away you go. And it's actually just as easy. So it's more easy.
I noticed part of the forums got smaller. Someone's teaching your existence over Zoom.
Yep.
So we think of the options there, it's not used. It's just the same as a person presentation.
Yeah, sure, you can lead a horse to water. I mean, maybe we need to maybe we need to make this an article in the weekly, Joe. We may need to sort of publicise it a bit more that, you know, this is the reason why we're not getting around, but we are more open now than ever before, and please feel free to zoom in, and yeah, public forum is no different. You have your say. And I think it's really important that people do have their say. And I don't know if it's necessarily, this is the reason why public forums got smaller. I think there's other reasons perhaps behind it too. Maybe there's less issues. Maybe people are starting to figure out that a lot of the public forum that they would come and talk to about were actually service requests. Councillor Hill.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of something in the weekly, look, not much goes in the weekly from the board or well, just that really. It's not often the board writes anything into the weekly community. And my own view is that I think that could happen much more often, where the board lets the community know about things or a position it's taken or clarifies something that's, not quite right. And this would be what you've proposed, Grant. Why wouldn't that come from the board?
Yeah.
This is what's happening with public forum and Zoom, and just reminding everybody that you can Zoom in pretty easily and bring up issues with us. Let's get the board with a bit more of a community sort of facing profile publicly, I think.
I think that's a good idea. Okay.
Can I just add that my video comes in off as I go on? I'm on my iPad, so when I go into Diligent to look at the documents, then my video cuts off. So that's why I'm coming and going. Sorry about that.
That's all right. We know you're there. Okay. All right. So do we need to need to sort of sit down and work out how, whether we do that every month? I mean, Joe does a good report, or do we need to, someone needs to sit down and sort of meteorize with Joe, or do we need to write our own little report about some of the things that are going on?
I would suggest meteorizing
Yeah, it's just gonna, yep. The communications team, talking about our communications team and utilising the assistance of them. Right. To put things out, because they write things well, and maybe we need to have a better relationship or a greater relationship with the communications team. Yeah.
I agree that I think that there are staff resources for things like this, and I think that we're at a distance, and it's easy to forget that they're there. But I think that we should actually make use of them.
Yep.
As regards the modifications to section 47, I'm not aware of any indications of when those may change, but whether there is anybody in the staff in the local democracy team who may know when we can expect that may be changed, I don't know. I mean, I think that would be a very, perhaps just, a short-term decision by the government to change it. For your grant,
yes.
The Democracy Services team assisted with that agenda item in the GS report.
Right.
Yeah. So they will get up to date. Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right. So nothing else to add to that conversation. We'll move on to the draft stock control and droving bylaw 2022. And at the regulatory committee meeting, 16th of June, the committee resolved to consult on the draft stock control droving bylaw and agreed to a consultation period from the 1st of July to the 1st of August. Draft statement of proposal and draft bylaw is attached, and I'm assuming I'll take that we've all read that for our information. Do we want to put a submission in? I guess that's the question here as a board. Are we willing? Anyone feel? Eddie.
Yeah, I think it's important that we meet briefly and workshop through this. Now is not the time, obviously, but I think it's important that we submit to this proposal. A lot of farmers in Golden Bay, obviously. Really important that we, as a community board, have a chat to some of them and then come together and submit on this.
I tend to agree. So can we work out a time or a date? Or shall we just wait for this to for your isolation to pass?
I'm stuck in isolation now till Wednesday. I think I'm free as long as no one else gets it.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm happy to zoom in. If the time suits you better, I'm easy.
Pretty most of this next month. Okay.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to say that this has generated quite a lot of concern among farmers in the district. I'm not a farmer myself, so I actually personally can't comment on the issues myself. And I think it's really important that we, that we inform our submission to what the actual issues are for farmers. But Abby, you're farming.
April. And April's pretty much.
Yeah. Sorry, Chris, I see you've got your hand up and you've got some really relevant information to this drafting, but I would suggest that we invite possibly some Federated Farmers representatives to our workshop to help us understand. Just one of the ones, just quickly, holding stock back 50 metres from the road when you're crossing is it's a tricky one. It's almost unworkable for farmers. But yeah, as a board, I think we really need to hear that from them and from their experiences. But sorry, Chris, I jumped in.
Yeah, Chris.
I don't think you jumped in, it was your turn. In terms of, you might have seen the media release about this from council saying that the draft had been released. The draft had been approved, the strategy and policy, and then released for consultation. And a comment from the mayor, I haven't got that in front of me now, but it says something like, we realise there's been some mistakes made. So, and there was a bit of a kick up about it. The staff were engaged with FEDS, Federated Farmers. So Tyler Langford and Sue Brown were involved from here, and the regional Federated Farmers group were involved, as I understand it, and the National Policy Group out of Wellington were involved too. So that's with TDC staff, just getting informed and working out, what a good draft would be. And Kim, you'll correct me here if I've got this wrong, and you might have something to add, I think, perhaps, but. And so that advice, I guess, was listened to, but there needed to be another loop back out to FEDS, I think, before the draft was released. So some of the things in it that are unworkable or unnecessary, perhaps, weren't intended. So as it relates to sheep, I think it wasn't intended to relate to sheep the way that it perhaps could. And the idea of 50 metres holding them back was, I think, as I understand it, to do with dairy cows coming down the lane to the road, just to not have them right up the front for runoff, I guess. But then you'd say, well, if you can't have them 50 metres, you've got to be 50 metres back. Then what if they're in a paddock? You don't have a lane and they're beef or something, and they're just in the paddock, they're right next to, so that would be unworkable in a practical sense, but none of that was intended, of course. So that's a shame, and it has been raised that does TDC need to replicate these bylaws if they're working well in other places of the country? Perhaps Gisborne's got one, I think, and I do support that we look around the country, see what would work for us and what's workable, and not put so much staff time into recreating things that are known. But it was good to talk with Sue and to talk with Tyler about the process. And yes, I think I agree. There's a board to meet with some of the feds and generate a good submission.
Dave,
Yeah, I think what we've got to watch out for, and I've read it a couple of times, that some, not being a farmer, I suppose, it's unclear how often it would be required. But having to get permits and consents and whatnot for crossing the road, I think we need to steer clear from that as much as possible, because consents take about a month to get, at least these days. By then, your sheep are eating the dirt. So we really need to allow farmers to move their stock around whenever they want, and not have to apply for a permit or a consent unless it's absolutely necessary.
thank you, Dave. Yeah. Kim, you have
Yeah, just building through the chair, just building on the comment there from Councillor Hill. Look, I guess when you sit back, the bylaw that we have had in the district has lapsed. That's the first issue here. So staff have looked to recreate one. It was off the back of a problem where actually there were some health and safety risks that the community were exposed to. So, you know, there's a real issue underpinning this. So like with all regulation, there's always the potential for unintended consequences if you script it wrong, and that's why it's really useful to have this socialised through a process. And I think our rural folk are really going to add value about nuancing this down to a scenario that's workable. We just have to bear in mind that there's two components that sort of come into this. One is the health and safety aspect, and the second is management of environmental effects. Those two things are contained within the rules, and it's always difficult to to find that balance first off. There is a process going through, and I know the feedback that the staff have received is, let's look at where we've got good practice happening elsewhere in the country and see whether we can leverage off some of that good or best practice. Is usually unique, but good practice is where we're trying to get to. And so there's a number of messages here. So I think it'd be really positive if the community board were able to draw its rural folk together and look at it from a practical point of view to say, well, if this thing was to play out in this way, where are the challenges? Knowing full well that those two outcomes of health and safety of our people and management of environmental effects are worthy objectives. How do we get that in such a way as that the farmers find that workable for the different situations that they face? And you really do in your community have a myriad of these situations, probably more so than anywhere else in the district. So I think it's really incumbent on having a nice, deep, connected discussion with your rural folk. And I certainly think that's a positive thing.
thank you, Kim. Eddie,
So I am happy to contact Sue and Tyler and get some possible dates. I'm aware that the 1st of August is not that far away. And see if we can get them into a meeting along with the staff members for some workshopping ideas. I don't know that we have time. I mean, I'll talk to Sue and Tyler, see how they feel. See if we can pull a group of farmers together. It's fairly quiet farm-wise at the moment, but we are heading into calving for dairy. But I can have a chat, get some dates, and see where we can go from there within the next couple of days.
perfect. Thank you, Eddie. April,
It'd be good to actually get the farmers affected by this, not just some farmers are affected more than others. We do this a lot. You know, federated farmers might represent farmers, but it may not be your experience that what it could have. So I think to talk to some farmers that actually cross the stock regularly or something, and actually practically do this. That may not be Sue or Tyler, it may not be them.
No.
I'd like to have some hardcore farmers here who deal with this on a regular basis.
do you know some?
Yes.
What is Greg Bellows?
Well, yes. So is it possible for you to also liaise with Abby and make this happen?
Yeah.
Is that going to work? Abby?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, sure.
Good. So we'll hear in the next couple of days and get a date together and start. Thank you. I think that's a good outcome so far. Good start. I really do. So, yeah, that brings us to the end of the chair's report. I'm happy to move that. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Butler. All in favour? Aye. And against? Carried. Right. What have we got next? Right. The naming of Matapipi River Cycle Bridge. Again, I take it we've all seen the feedback in Mana Whenua, or is that? What page? Yeah. This and page 57 or 35 on Dalton. Yeah, MKM, I was at the meeting. I'll just speak to this very quickly. I was at the MKM meeting, and there was a little confusion at first as to the Matapipi Bridge. It was like, we've already got a name on the Matapipi Bridge, but they were quite aware it was a clip-on cycle bridge. So once that was mentioned, it was unanimous and very quickly brought out that they're very happy for this name to be endorsed. So yeah, Abby, you've got your hand up. No, you can't get rid of your hand. Okay, you're on mute anyway. So what's the process from here to?
I've got my hand up too, Grant. I'm not sure if
Sorry,
you can see that.
there's a light reflecting on the screen that I'm looking at, so I don't see your hand because the light. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to move the resolution, Grant. Christine's been one of those people, along with some others, that have been at the heart of generating cycleways and liaising with council and the board. And Christine's presented at council a number of times and at the board too. And when I was at her funeral, someone leaned over and whispered in my ear and said, wouldn't that be a lovely acknowledgement to have the cycle bridge named after her? And so we did a bit of checking in with Jamie and others around the process of that. So I'm very supportive. Quite a shock that her death was quite a shock to a lot of us. And yeah, she really contributed to the community. So I think it's a really appropriate thing to do, and a nod to her and her efforts.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Have we got a motion for this?
Yes.
Oh, we have. All right. So you're
I'm moving the resolution, Grant.
yep. And
I'm happy to second that, Grant.
okay. And is there any more discussion about it? Then I'll put it to the vote. All in favour?
Right.
Aye.
It's carried. That's quick and easy. And so that'll go through to the appropriate people.
Mhm.
Thank you very much for that. Financial summary. Finances. I take it we've all read it. Is there any questions? That's all I'm going to say. Are there any questions about our finances? Any points of interest?
No.
No. Okay. All right, then I'm happy to move that. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second
Yeah.
it.
Okay. And all in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Right. Brings us to the action sheet. That was pretty quick. Okay, and Equitable Seawall is still ongoing. If you want to hear more about that in the future, stay on.
No news is good.
No news, good. Thank you. Road occupations, again, it's we're just keeping an eye on that. Still going to keep it on there. The update on the MOU. Abby, you might have some information about that? Because you spoke at the MOU, can I?
Yes, I spoke with Linda Kenton from local government. We had probably about a half-hour chat through what the expectations of the document were. She's come back with some really good feedback. She's emailed it through to myself and to Elaine. I need to catch up with Elaine to merge those suggestions into the document. But she was of the same opinion now that obviously it's a document that will be adopted by the new board to ensure that their induction is great, their training's great, and they get a really good sense of the community board's role. So the draft will be in the next chair's report for just for your information and feedback again, really, and then it'll sit till the new board take their chairs in October.
Thank you very much, Annie. So can we take this off here now?
Yeah, they can come on.
Good. Okay. Submissions for the
What's this for?
is it done? Is ONL and SNL today?
Yep.
Yeah, so the situation we were up to with the ONL and ONF and SNL is that there's been they're in the process of finalising the lines or the boundaries of these sites, and I'm just wondering about whether or not Paul Sangster has been replied to or not. I mean, I see there's a response here from staff, but whether or not we have actually responded, given information to Paul. Do you know that? Yes.
No, I don't know.
It's a very good point.
Right.
I think we need to.
So, yeah, my suggestion would be that we just simply send to Paul what is in italics on the action sheet there.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. He did bring it up at public forum last month, so
Right.
I think it's only right that we do that.
Yeah. And so the next step in this process is for the rules to be worked out, for the rules for the activities in the coastal environment and the outstanding natural landscapes. And that is something that Stephanie Stiles with Bottom School will be starting to work on in consultation with residents who are affected.
Okay. Oh yeah, Councillor Hill, thank you.
I think if someone's going to write to Paul about that, you could just include a sentence to say he's free, of course, to ring staff just to check in around processes like that. He's aware of that, I'm sure. He probably knows them all. You know, it's really fine just to ring up and say, where are things at with that process, or what happened to my submission, or how come we didn't hear back, or something, just to encourage him to, you know, a sense of agency that he can, you know, he can do that.
Sure. Thank you. All right. So we can Waitapu Bridge again. Now I've taken that to the MKN. I took the letter that April sent through from Paul with his points, and they forwarded it on to. I can update you. They forwarded on to Andrew James, and Andrew James rang me the other day, and it has gone to Wellington for them to have a closer look at the points that have been raised. So that's where it's at. So again, we might want to mention that back to Paul. I only found that out on, what's the day, Tuesday, Friday. Collingwood mobility parking.
Sorry, can we take that off now? That-
Oh, we can take it off. It'll be looked at. Yeah. Collingwood mobile mobility parking, well, we've got that, we've got an action there, which I think is going to replace this. We're getting Robert to come in, so we can take that one off and just just say that we'll leave it on and put that we're going to seek Robert or Jamie to come in to talk about the planning process of that and how it's going to work. I think that's we keep it at that as an action. Okay. So everyone happy with that?
Sorry, through the chair.
Yeah.
I think that we were going to get Jamie to talk about the speed limit.
Yeah.
Business.
Yeah.
And
Not the mobility parking.
Yeah.
Mobility parking, we just wanted to
Mm.
make sure that there was, if necessary, there was going to be, perhaps a look at the bigger picture of parking in Collingwood because of the issues of all-day parking, which
well, that's with him too, isn't it? Though.
yeah, all right,
I think there's both issues are with
both issues.
both. That's
Sure.
what that was my understanding
Yeah.
of one conversation.
Okay, sure.
Eddie.
Yeah, no, sorry, Grant, that wasn't my understanding.
Oh.
My microphone did stop working for a bit. My understanding that I'm going to talk to Robert and possibly Jamie if Robert loops him in about parking in Collingwood and the time limits and the disabled parking being at the hall. And then somebody, maybe me, was going to invite Jamie to come in to talk about processes around decision making.
All right, thank you for that clarity. So can we put that just as add that to the action?
Yeah.
Keep it on there.
Mhm. Cool.
Okay, thank you. So that's the action sheet. Can I have a mover for the action sheet?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Councillor Butler moves it, and a seconder, please.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
April. All in favour?
Right.
Right.
Okay, correspondence. Now, is there anything in correspondence that comes up that we need, anyone wants to talk about? I take it we've all read the correspondence.
No, nothing that needs responding to.
Is there anything we need to discuss? I think it's all stuff from a lot of information. Okay.
You're talking about the local government stuff.
Oh, everything, or anything on
It's
correspondence.
just to say that they note, as noted, attempts by territorial authorities to de-establish their community boards on the grounds they will not play a significant role in the community neighbourhoods from the policy. The territorial authority is not prepared to delegate significant decision-making responsibilities to their community boards, but can be understood that a local community is concerned may see their community boards not having teeth, if indeed they even aware of its existence. This may then be reflected in a lack of interest in standing for community boards at election time with territorial authority, including the boards, are not valued by the community. Proposing either they are disestablished or at least not be given any additional powers. But it's good to see the local government commission are acknowledging there is an issue.
Yeah. So again, that means that that's up to us, especially up to us who are on the board, because the election, the nominations open shortly for the community board, and so it's up to us to kind of to encourage people to stand,
Well, I think it's up to
keep the boards alive. That's really important.
But they won't stay alive unless we are given more control and more say, and that's what the state, that's why I see that statement. it's the reason people don't stand. It's not up to us to just say, encourage them to stand. It's also up to the territorial authority to let us have more input. And that's what the state acknowledges.
Sure.
And I guess that's where the local board group we're trying to head. So
And
it's good that this is acknowledged that
Yeah.
it is a problem.
And I think we have come a long way since that started, that process too. A long way. Councillor Butler.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just draw our attention to the heading, which is the role of community boards and other local governance bodies in the future system of local government. And so on this board, have we had, I don't think that we've actually had an introduction to the fact that local government is going to be reformed and that community boards may have a greater role. And so this is the purpose of us receiving this, is so that we can think about the role that community boards maybe could play. You know, there is, this has come from Local Government New Zealand, and one of the options for this community board would be to write, I know we talk about writing letters all the time, but to, if we have a view, not, and that doesn't have to be done immediately, to feed that back to Local Government New Zealand. Yeah, so you see this as a paper prepared for the future for local government panel by the Community Boards Executive Committee, and that has been put forward by Local Government New Zealand. But this is, you know, quite an important thing that's going to happen in the next term of our community board.
Yes, I think Paul warned us forearmed, and I think we need to look at this, take this pretty seriously, because you know, sometimes, and I've heard this said a few times recently, you know, be careful what you ask for. And I think if we are asking for a lot more authority on what's going on in the Bay, we'll get it. We will get it, and community boards will get it. It might mean an awful lot more work. It might be a whole different structure as far as community boards go. But I think it's an exciting time to be on a board over this next 6 years, I'd say, coming, because there are changes afoot, and whether we end up, what we end up with, we don't know. And we have a unique situation here in Golden Bay, a little bit like Waiheke Island and Great Barrier Island, but which has been brought up before. So I believe that we need to, maybe we do need to have a workshop from, who did you have a workshop? Local Government Commission? About what's going on, so we get an idea.
I suggest that Tim Drummond might be able to give us some suggestions.
I'm going to talk.
Who
Okay,
might give us a workshop.
Eddie first, and then Chris.
Yeah, a lot of this has been incorporated into the suggestions that have come back from Linda, which will go into a charter, which will come back to the board in August.
Thank you. Chris.
Thanks, Chair. The local government review panel's been underway for quite a while, and it's been meeting with councils around the country. We've had, I think, at least 2 meetings with them, and you know, I've written about this in the weekly a bit, about the panel and the process, and you can go on the website, on the review panel's website, and you know, and can make, they've asked for people for feedback. I mean, there'll be a more formal consultation process phase, and they haven't come up with their sort of draft. They've got an interim, they've produced an interim report, but I think there's a, you know, when they sort of settle on something more solid, the signals are all there from their earlier reports they're producing about, you know, there are 5 key areas they're considering, or principles that they're valuing. So that it's been underway for quite a while, and the board could always write a letter to the review panel. They'll read it and they'll appreciate it. This isn't a tick box exercise at all. So this is where Janine Dowding's gone for a year. She got seconded to be there. She's tapped on the shoulder for that, to be there. I think it's called their executive, chief executive, perhaps, Kim is the title. So Janine's in there working away with them, and next week I'm going to the Local Government New Zealand conference. They have a hui on a day before the conference, Te Maruata hui, and the panel will be there, and the panel will be at the conference along with all the other reform panels. But you know, in meeting the people on the panel and having a yarn with Janine about it, they're really genuine people, and they've all been involved in local government one way or another, and you know, big sort of backgrounds in that area. So the board could front foot it and, you know, have a look at some of the material that's been produced so far and write to the panel, or could just get clear about the timelines for the panel's process, be ready to go with a great submission. You can see that the community boards executives there have produced this one that's been produced for the panel, is my understanding. And
So
yeah, it's not difficult to sort of research and find out what's going on here.
maybe we need to workshop it ourselves and write a letter. Abby,
Yeah, we absolutely could. I will just refer us back to the workshop we had with MKM, we had TDC, we had the local board working party, and we couldn't come up with anything concrete as to what extra powers, for lack of a better word, we wanted. So it was that I don't know how many. Yeah, we were all there. So it was an interesting position to find ourselves in, because the question was asked of us: what do the community board want? Do you want say-so over this? Do you want say-so over that? And there wasn't really. We didn't have a cohesive idea. So I think before we absolutely would need to have a conversation and a workshop before we go any further.
The reform process is much wider than that, of course, too.
Mm.
So they'll be looking, although it'll be recommendations to the government around, and they will have some commentary around structures they propose. So if you imagine, I think with TDC, I think 55% of our assets are Three Waters, and 30, maybe 5%, don't quote me, are our debt related to Three Waters. And if you imagine that going to entity C, so what we are, entity C, what's council left with, and the language that the reform panel are using relates to things like placeholding, the well-beings. Tim made a joke the other day about, about providing, about housing and employment, and it was half joking, but they're really looking at something quite different. These are really big shifts. I don't think this will be tinkering around the edges, but I think that the way that councils will be structured and the purpose of them, and then how the local community structure is, this is a big change in New Zealand. I mean, I think the reforms last happened 30 years ago, where they decided to try and standardise everything. But then you end up with Auckland having, the same sort of principles as somewhere like Tasman. So
yeah, it doesn't work.
It's a really big piece of work nationally that's happening. And I think the main thing for now, maybe for the board, will be to just understand the process and where the consultation starts kicking in and where you can put in formal submissions.
Mm.
Okay. So where do we go from here?
I'll just like respond to Abby's stuff about community board and for the local board. I think the local board, we got the sense, the sense that some of the community board was shying away from maybe getting out some of their comfort zone and taking on extra responsibilities. And certainly the local board wasn't going down that track at all, and it would have been slightly different to the community board. in their roles, and I think, but I know for the working group, the local group, it's definitely a different vision of what probably came out of the community.
Yep.
I get the sensation you before we got that extra workload, blah, blah, blah. But my feeling is that those standing for a local board would be prepared to take on those extra responsibilities, and that should judge the extra responsibilities by the current board, and that may not happen. And I think that the extra workload is a problem.
No, it wouldn't have been a problem if we were a local board, for sure.
I just want to say
Yeah.
that
I don't want to have this conversation.
So we need to move on from this and actually come up with an idea of where we're going with it. I do like the idea of sitting down and workshopping, going through what. Has everybody read this document? Yeah. And do we want to submit a letter to them? I think they would appreciate it from our perspective. Look, we were under the microscope. We had a great process, and I think we're in almost a unique position because of the process to actually look at how it works and how we are as a board and what we have over here. So I'm very keen to workshop it and make something happen personally. Celia.
I mean, yeah, one of the documents there is written by Gavin Beattie,
Right.
who we were involved
Yeah.
with, over the local board issue.
Yeah.
So I agree that actually a lot of work's been done.
Yeah.
And he's aware of a lot of our work as
Mhm.
well. Though he's local government commission, he's not LGNZ.
No. So
Gavin was very aware of the people attending the situation, I think, of our community. I think he had great sympathy for the position we were in, and he personally would have liked to see local board. That's his personal.
anyway, this is not about a local
And
board
that's
versus
not what I'm
community
saying,
board.
is
So I
He
just
was saying that he understood the position that.
Yeah.
Isn't he from other community boards? If you read this document, a lot of them feel they do not have a lot of say or power, or are they worthwhile? It wasn't this community board alone or members of this community that felt that. It's a New Zealand wide
Yeah.
thing, and that's why this review is necessary.
and that's why, because we were under the magnifying glass, it's really important that we perhaps submit to it and we workshop it and go through and write a letter appropriate to this to these guys, to the commission, the people running it, to Janine's team. What are they called?
It's a panel grant. It's the
Panel,
Future
thank
for
you.
Local Government panel. It's a review panel.
Yeah.
And it's not just LGNZ. So I think the first thing is just to get clear that the board's clear about what's underway, what's being undertaken, what's happened so far, and what the process is and the points at which to be able to submit. And so that we're not in a position where, we realise, we've got 2 weeks to make a submission around this. So this is a nationwide changes to local government. Councils, boards, well, who knows what will be cooked up.
And we've got elections coming up, and we could all be off the community board at the end of for the next community board, and the information that we have will be lost. Well, not lost, but that. So our experience, I think, is actually valuable here. So, do we workshop it fairly soon and actually come up with some bullet pointed stuff? Oh, sorry, Kim.
Yeah, I just through the chair, I just wanted to add that the Local Government New Zealand conference that's coming up is a point where I guess a lot of information will be brought together. A lot of insights will be shared. The review panel will be fully participating in that, and it might be worth seeking some sort of debrief. And I wonder whether Councillor Hill could be part of that process, because that would then bring you up to speed with what is in play. And the major department here is the Department of Internal Affairs. You know, they're the ones that are housing, you know, or looking after the reform review team and housing the local government commission, rather than Local Government New Zealand, who are, you know, an entity in their own right. So I think you'll get multiple perspectives coming out of that conference, and it might be quite good to, you know, sort of reset the foundations, I guess, for this discussion from there, and then consider what to do, because there's no submission period open right now. But I think the key thing is so you get up so that when that submission period opens, you're actively able to engage with a, you know, fully informed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, that sounds very sensible. Thank you, Kim. Appreciate that. So let's wait till Chris has been to the, and you give us a 74-page report next meeting. Congrats, Councillor Hill. No, I'm joking. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. The website is www.futureforlocalgovernment.govt.nz, and there's some pretty interesting articles on there. So they're looking around the world as well at what's happening. They're looking at quite a shift, I think. So that would be a good bit of pre-reading to do, just about, you know, where their thinking's going, and yeah.
Okay.
So we can all take some responsibility for sort of understanding that process, I think, and getting a little bit up to speed that way too.
Whereabouts is it this year, Chris?
Palmerston North for our sins.
Okay, so yeah, if maybe even a verbal report or a report, something next meeting would be really great. Can we put that on Chair's report for you to just feed back to us?
Yeah, I'm just looking ahead to see the date of the meeting, next meeting. Yeah, probably a verbal report, I think.
Yep. That'd be great.
9th of August, yeah.
Thank you. All right. So anything else in the correspondence that needed addressing? Otherwise, can we have a move of correspondence, please? Abby, seconder, please. Celia, all in favour? Aye. No, sorry, got my words mixed up. Passed. And I think that brings us to the end of our meeting. Could I ask, call on Councillor Hill again to just close our meeting today? The karakia.
Yeah, happy to do that. Thank you, Chair. Karakia tātou, kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa pauna mu te moana, aroha atu, aroha mai, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou katoa. Let calm go forth. May the sea shine like the greenstone. Goodwill has been exchanged, and acknowledgements to you, me and everyone here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Jess, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
That's all right.
It's good to come and see how it works and what Lloyd does.
Yeah, we should send you a copy of our standing orders.
Abby has my email.
Right, so Jess will get them.